Welcome to part 9 of our video series on working with MVC in our course. And today we're going to learn how to work with validations and scaffolding. So go ahead and open up your My First MVC application we've been working on. The last thing we did were edits. Now we're going to open up our project. We're going to go to the Solution Explorer and we're going to drop down to the models that we created earlier, and we created one called Majors. In that Majors model, we specified that we had a model that was mapped to a table called Majors, which we had in our database, and we set a private or a primary key on it for Major ID, and we have another column called Major Description. Now what we want to do is specify some validations within our model so that if the user ever works with this model, those validations have to be true in order for any type of operation like an edit or a save or insert. Those validations have to evaluate to a true for it to work. Within our model, we can include data annotations, which include attributes on the different columns. These attributes will be used by the model to determine how they interface with the program and with the end user. For instance, we already specified one earlier where we said that this column is a key and we have a table that we're working with. We have another attribute called required. I could come in and specify with the square bracket required, and that now says that whenever they go to enter data for the major ID, the system will validate to make sure that there is something in there. Along with required, we can specify that there's an error message if they do not enter in what we're looking for. So within the required field, all we would have to do is go to that tag required and then specify an error message. So right at the end of the required tag, we say parenthesis error message, and then we specify what message should display if they don't type it in. We could do that same attribute for the major description. Another thing that we could do is we could specify maximum lengths on fields. Currently, the way our web view will work is users could type in whatever they wanted, but we could actually specify the number of characters they should type in, and we do that through the string length attribute. And if you don't remember the size of your fields, simply go back to the Server Explorer, look at your context, your DB context, the tables, the major table. You can click on the column in that table, and then down in the property window you can see that it's a length of 2, and major description is a length of 30. So coming back over to my code, I could put the attribute string length and say that it should only be 2 long. And along with string length, you can specify minimum lengths, maximum lengths, and you can put error messages on there. For example, let's say that we came down to the major description field and we said that the maximum length was 30, and then we could say that the minimum length should be at least 4. And if they don't type in what we're looking for, we will display the error message. The min length is 4 and the max is 30. So now if they try to type in a value that is less than 4 characters long, we'll display this message, or if they try to type in something more than 30, then they'll get that error message. That's a string length attribute, and it controls how many characters should be typed in. We have other attributes also, like a regex attribute. You ought to go take a look at that. Another attribute that is used all the time is called the display name. When you scaffold a view, the view will go out to the model and grab the names of the different columns and then do HTML helpers to display the name of that column. And maybe we want that to be a little more descriptive of what they're typing in. So we could actually come to the model and specify the display name, which will be used during scaffolding. And so instead of using major underscore ID in the scaffolding, this will now use major space ID. And we have a red line under it, so we just need to go and resolve and bring in the component model, which now takes care of that. And then I'll drop down and do that on the other field also. And so we'll call that one major description. Now by doing this, what we're doing is making our model more descriptive of how it should work. Other attributes you can apply in a model include an email attribute, a compare attribute, a range attribute, and those are all things that you can specify for each of the fields to determine how the data interacts with your source code. For instance, the range attribute specifies the minimum and maximum constraints for a numerical value, and those values are actually inclusive, meaning if I had a field on there, and let's say that that column was an int value and it was called minor age, I could specify a range attribute on it, 0,17, which says when the user types in any values for minor age, it will start at 0 and go up to 17. So they are inclusive. Of course, I don't have that in my table structure. I'm going to delete that and save that. Other attributes that you might want to look at, if you go Google for these, you could actually say there's a scaffold column, and you could say don't include this column in our model when the user scaffolds. Other things you could do is specify a display format, or specify read-only, or specify that it's a password field. So go take a look at all the data validations. But what they allow us to do is control how the user interacts with our fields. Now that we have our model set up the way we want it to work, which you'll spend a lot of time making your models look really good, then you come back over to your application and right mouse click on controllers. We'll choose add. And then under add, we'll choose new scaffolded item. Then we want to choose MVC controller with views using entity framework. Click add. And then you choose what model you want to work with. We've been working with the majors model. Make sure your DB context class is selected. Leave everything else checked. Generate the views, layout page, what's the controller name. Click add. And now scaffolding will go in and create all the controllers and the views associated with that model to allow you to create records and delete records and edit records and show records. In fact, here's the controller that it made for you. Notice it automatically brought in your DB context class, and we called it DB. There's an index that it made, an index action method, which says simply return to the view the DB context of the majors DB set as a list. So that goes out now to the model and maps to the majors table and returns all the records as a list through the DB set to the DB context and sends it to the view. Meaning that down here in our views, we probably have a majors folder, which we do, and there's the index. And when you look at index up at the top, it says it's working with a model, IEnumerable, or a list of our projects, models, majors model. And so this is what makes it aware that it's actually working with our model that we created. And that's all done through our controller. We have another one that says show the details, which says create a variable called majors of type majors model and go do a search on a specific ID and then return that back to the view. We have a create, get, HTTP get, which will display the screen, and then as you type in data, then it will go ahead and do what they call a post, which is used for saving data. So the get serves data up to the view, and the post receives data back from the view. It does our cross-site checking and then binds the data, which you've seen all this in a previous video. And then it says, go see if the model is valid. So now it checks the model, comes back over to here, and checks all of our attributes to make sure that they validate to true. If they do validate to true, then we go ahead and say, go to that DB context, major DB set, and add a new record working with the values received in that majors model. And then it just saves that record and goes back to the index. So this is a very important statement, because this is what says validate the model. Go check the model and make sure everything we have works. We also have an edit action method that was created for us. There's an edit get, and here's the edit post, so we can edit records. And we've also got a delete that was created for us, a get for the delete, and a post for the delete. Notice that what we do on the post is we actually have a post. We specify the action method we work with, which is this one right here. And then we say, but we're doing a delete confirmed. So we make sure that we really do want to delete the record. And if we do confirm it, then we go and search for that record, remove the record, save the changes to the database. And that's all by scaffolding and setting up your models with the necessary attributes. And then back in the view itself, notice we already said that it works with the model, but it uses HTML helpers. And it automatically creates it for you. It says go out to the model and grab the name for description. And we're going to use the display name for, meaning instead of displaying major underscore description, it's going to come out to the model and say, what name do you want me to display? And so it will say major space description. Back in the view again, same thing, display name for, display for, and that allows us to get the data, and then it automatically creates other action links to allow you to edit, look at details, and delete. So let's save this and run this and see how scaffolding actually works and does a lot of the work for you. I use scaffolding when I'm just working with a specific table, like a lookup table. So here are the default majors that we added to our database when we first started the tutorial many videos ago. And let's say that we wanted to change accounting to be something else. This was automatically created for us in scaffolding. Here's an action link. I can click on edit. It now takes this item and searches for it in the database. And we could say accounting major and click save. I could come back to this and say, no, I just want to call it AC and try to save it. Let's see what happens. The min length is 4 and the max is 30. That's because of our model. What if I said accounting and I typed in a whole bunch of data, save. Once again, the error message came up. What if I just didn't type anything, click save? It says major description is required. So if you set that model up correctly, it will do a lot of the work for you without you even writing any code. And that's how you set up a model and work with scaffolding to create your controllers and views.